Hi everyone, in today's session of the Midlife Reinvention Summit, I have the privilege of speaking with Julie Randal, who will be sharing an extraordinary reinvention story. Julie's reinvention wasn't triggered by dissatisfaction or a desire to do more or have more. It was forced upon her through a stage 4 metastatic melanoma diagnosis and a prognosis of just months to live. What followed wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a complete reinvention of identity, mindset, and what it means to take control of your life when everything suggests you have none. So, Julie, thank you so much for taking part in the Midlife Reinvention Summit. So, how are you going today?
I'm going good. Been looking forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Really looking forward to telling my story.
Brilliant. And the audience, I'm sure, are going to be inspired by what comes next. So, well, let's get back to the beginning. So, where before your diagnosis, or what was life like? How were you as a person? What was going on in your life?
Okay, so we're going back to 2012. I live on the northern beaches of Sydney, so I guess we were the quintessential northern beaches family, living by the beach, two kids and a dog, a husband. Um, Kids were sporty, so life was really busy. However, they were getting a little bit older, and it appeared we might have some time to ourselves and maybe plan a couple of trips. And yeah, and then I was turning 50 and I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't happy about the number. So I called it my 49th on the, no, Julie's 40th on the wedding, excuse me, on the birthday invitations. And I thought I was clever and funny. I wasn't going to turn 50, I was going to turn 4010. And turns out that was the least of my worries. Yeah. So after I got over myself and had the birthday party, I drove to work 4 days later. And I distinctly remember this day because I was driving along. It was winter, it was June, 21st of June, 2012. I was driving along and I was looking up at the sunshine and really, practicing gratitude. So, and it's not something I did every day. And I was going to work, I was going out for lunch, and I thought, oh, how good is life? And I did go to work, I did go out for lunch with a couple of colleagues. I went back to the office and basically couldn't speak, just like that. And somebody asked me a question, and I had ended up just falling down and having a massive brain seizure in my workplace. And I thought I was the fittest and healthiest I'd been in a long time. I was training for a over 45s touch football tournament, and boom, just like that, my life changed forever.
No, incredible. Yeah, like it's kind of like amazing everything's going well and then suddenly something happens and you have no real kind of like signs that anything's going on. So this must have been a major kind of like shock for you. So what was going through your head afterwards, obviously, after you recovered, I'm assuming in hospital. So what was going through your head?
Yeah, so I woke up to paramedics trying to bring me round. And I remember sort of, my head was hanging down, and I remember just like hearing my name being called over and over again. And then I looked down and I saw their boots and their uniforms before I saw their faces. And I'm just like, what the hell has happened here? You know? And next minute they're popping me on a trolley, wheeling me down to the ambulance. And I tried to be funny because we'd just been out for Chinese. And I said, that's it, I'm never eating Chinese food again. And everybody kind of had a bit of a laugh, but in my head, I knew there was something radically wrong. So we get taken to a hospital here in Sydney called St Vincent's Hospital, go into emergency. My husband arrives, my children arrive. Obviously, they've been alerted, and he's telling me that I've just partied too much for my birthday and everything's going to be fine. And I had a myriad of tests, and it took 24 hours. And then I'm sitting there in my hospital bed, and the doctor, you know, with a couple of interns either side, approached me, and I knew it wasn't good news. And he, just straight up said, Julie, you've got tumours in your brain, your liver, your lungs, your pancreas, your lymph nodes. And, the list went on. And he said, this is not good news. And I'm, this can't be right. Like this can't be right. And he's trying to talk to me about medication. And I just jumped out of bed, hospital gown on, and I took off down the corridor. And my husband's trying to get scripts off this guy for whatever it was, steroids, I think, because of my brain. And I just ran, and he's chasing me, and I was running for the hills. I didn't know where I was going. I mean, I didn't even know where the car was. That was the shock of hearing that news when 24 hours before I was running out the back with my dog training. So then I had to, drive home that night. And I distinctly remember it being a Friday night and people were having fun and they were in bars and they were drinking and they were, and I remember thinking, how could you? How could you be doing that when this has happened to our family? And it was like they were rehearsing for the weekend, and I was rehearsing how to tell my daughters, my teenage daughters, that I was dying. And it was so tough. And we get home, and I walk up the stairs to my bedroom. I didn't know where to go or what to do. And then my children, I heard them one by one coming up the stairs, and I knew them by their footsteps. And when my eldest daughter walked in, I said, I'm really sorry, Morgan, I've got cancer. And I didn't even go into the detail. And she started wailing, no, mum, no, mum. And then my younger daughter came up the stairs, and she's not quite as demonstrative. And she just put her head in my chest and silently sobbed. And I could not stand seeing my children in that world of pain. And so, as we do as parents, as a mother, I said, I'm going to fix this. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to die. I promise. And I could feel this relief in them because we'd grew up, I'd grown up, and then I taught them that promise is a promise. So they believed me. And that was when what I call the little mind monsters, one jumped into my head and said, good luck with that, Mum. How are you going to do that? But the resolve there was I've made a promise. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to leave no stone unturned to keep this promise to my kids. And that's how the journey started. Yeah.
Amazing. So you think it was making that commitment helped you kind of like navigate all of those negative kind of like thoughts and beliefs that would have jumped into your head, but just having the knowledge that you'd made this commitment to your family and then you were going to do whatever you could. And then that was a way to keep those kind of like at bay.
Yeah, keeping them at bay, not easy. However, to answer your question, yes, I absolutely, you know, obviously none of this was planned. It was just all so sudden, but making that promise was no indication that I was going to make it, but it was definitely an indication that I was going to do absolutely everything, no matter what it took, to try and keep that promise to the kids. And yeah, I believe promises are strong. Promises to others and promises to yourself, depending on, I guess, your beliefs and how you've been brought up. But yes, Damien, to answer your question, that helped me navigate, and it helped me learn eventually how to dance with these mind monsters, because I mean, I'd never had stage 4 cancer. You're dying before. So that was the next level. I mean, we all have the negative voices and the limiting beliefs and just in our day-to-day life. But this was next level. So um, every time I'd sort of think about, I'm going to make this and whatever, I would have, the voice say, Julie, what are you doing? What are you, nobody's made this. Turns out nobody in the world had lived through this diagnosis that I could find anyway. And I believe that's true. Or it turns out there might have been one or two on their way to maybe recovery. So I would get those voices all the time. And and I worked this all out for myself because I had to. And it turns out it's science. It's not just me. But I worked out that all our brain and our mind is trying to do is keep us safe and keep us the same, keep the status quo, and that's all it knows how to do, and it thinks it's doing its job. So when I realized that, I would then learn this little speech and say, look, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know you're trying to keep me safe, because it was telling me, we'll move on to how I got to America. But it was telling me, what are you doing? You're going overseas, and you're going to die, and your children you're leaving your children behind in the last few months of your life. And at first I would just burst into tears, but then I'd say, hey, I know you're trying to keep me safe, but I have to do this. This is short-term pain for long-term gain. It's my only chance. And I think we're just going a couple of steps forward here, but because I haven't explained about how I got to America. But yeah, so the only thing on the table here in Australia at the time for me was chemotherapy. And it was 10% chance of holding back the tide. Like, it was never a cure. It was just, going to be given to me to give me a couple more months. I hated doing it. I didn't want to go on chemotherapy. I'd watch my mother, I'd watch my sister. It went against my grain, but I had to buy some time to keep this promise, right? So I had to, reluctantly. And I was, okay, I lost my hair, I lost all of that. And, a lot of people were like, oh, that's a small price to pay. And I'm like, no, it's not. When you're a woman and, you told you're dying, and then you lose all your, in my mind was my femininity at the time. It was a huge price to pay. So you're dealing with all of that, and you're dealing with other people's opinions and thoughts. And you're also dealing with the fact that now you've become open fodder, and everybody wants to know what's going on in your body. And I found that all really, really hard to deal with. So I kept pretty much to myself, because I just felt I don't need to tell everybody exactly what's going on, because once it gets out there, it's in the ether. So I stayed pretty much to myself, and I stayed pretty calm and strong. Um, did the chemotherapy. One night I lay in bed, sweating and carrying on, because I went into menopause, because I had a combination of chemos. They didn't warn me. And I laid there and I started examining my life. And I said to myself, Julie, if you're on the way out, like, if this is it, are you happy? Are you content with how you've lived your life? And look, I'd had a pretty good life. I wasn't mother of the year, but I was a pretty good mother, you know. Um, but had I lived to my potential? No, I hadn't. You know, I had had whispers about things, writing books, and because of the limiting beliefs and the mind monsters and all the rest of it, I sort of dismissed them. They'd always come back. And there's plenty of time for that, I tell myself. Never tell yourself that. So went through the chemo and at a doctor's visit, my husband and I were at a doctor's visit, and my husband asked how long the chemo would be working for. And he just matter of factly said, "Oh, put it this way, it won't be working in a couple of months." And I'm like, wow. I remember just again, head down, staring at the lino. And then I think I got a little bit obnoxious. And I said, if you effing think I'm going to wait around for that to happen, you've got another thing coming. And my husband said, is there anything else, Doc? Like, is there anything overseas? What can we do? And he said, oh, there is some things happening. And my husband, being the Aussie, said, can you tip us in? Can you tip us into one of... And he's like, no, I can't. If you want to go down that path, you're on your own. So I drove home. I think I was chucking a tantrum, saying I don't want to die and I've got a promise to keep and all of these things. And when I got home, I got onto the computer and I just researched and researched and researched for hours. And I came across this clinical trial in Portland, Oregon, in the US, that was basically looking for dying melanoma patients so they could test some drugs on them. And I qualified perfectly because that's exactly what I was. However, it wasn't easy to get into this clinical trial. So I contacted the hospital. They were quite bemused at first that this middle-aged woman from Australia has contacted them. And then the rejections came one after the other. It was, you're, not in our medical system. What if you die here? They've given me one excuse after the other. And, you're not American. This is only for Americans. Really sorry. And then the final clangor was, we're full, closed, 70 patients. And so I thought about it and I thought, I'm not going to die because I'm not American, and I'm not going to die because there's only 70 patients allowed in this. I'm a little girl. There's not much of me. There's got to be room for one more. So I just kept going, and then I ended up reading the Hippocratic Oath over the phone and said, you as doctors, if you know you've got something that may help me, you're obliged to do it. And I was just pulling out all the stops. And, I've got children. And anyway, something worked because a week later, I got a phone call from an American lady asking me what time I wanted my appointment with Dr. Erba, who was the doctor running the trial. And I had to pack up and go. And went over to America, got on the trial, and that was 14 years ago in June. And I'm completely cured of this cancer. So that's it in a
Amazing.
nutshell.
No, well, I'm sure there are
Yeah.
lots of other things in between, but no, that's
Yeah.
quite incredible. But your persistence and unwillingness to accept no, I mean, that's pretty incredible. Most people wouldn't have gone to the lengths you did. So, what do you think? Obviously, there was that commitment, but what shifted in you? Because, like, a lot of people would have just gone victim mode and then they would have said, I can't do anything. And then they wouldn't have tried as much as you have done. So, what do you think are the key things that made how you respond to this completely
Mm.
different?
Um, I think the key was learning that dance with my mind. And I think that's just not for sickness, that's for everything. That's for reinvention, that's for anything you do that might be a little bit outside your comfort zone. I think that was a huge one for me. And also, you know, interestingly, I came to not terms with dying, but I wasn't afraid of it. But what I was afraid of was the carnage that I would leave behind. You know, my kids, my husband, I've got a beautiful big family with sisters and brother, and you know, and of course I'd made that promise. And I'm a life lover, you know. Um, I did come to terms with dying, but I wanted way more to keep living. And when I lay in the dark that night and realized what I hadn't done, I promised Mrs. Universe that if I get through this, I will write that book. I will get on stage and give hope to others. You know, I started making a whole heap of new promises and just kind of, fired me up. Always in the back of my mind, there was that threat that, basically I was dying. But I just had to tell myself that, okay, no one's, when I was looking for a hero or someone that had survived, at first, I was like, okay, this isn't good. And then it was like, well, someone has to be the first. Someone has to be the first. Medicine is moving. They were having these clinical trials over there and they were showing a little bit of promise. Like they were first out of the rats, so there was no long-term data, but it was something, it was something. And my gut feeling told me, you need to be there. You have to be there. And yeah, so that's why I kept pushing. And to be honest with you, Damien, if they kept saying no, I'm pretty sure I would have just got on a plane and gone, knocked on the door. Yeah, I'm here. What are you going to do about it? So, yeah.
Oh, great.
Oh,
I
look, they
mean,
love me now. They didn't like me at first, but they love me now. So, at the hospital.
patient
Yeah.
71.
Yes.
So,
I became patient 71. Yes.
so in the book tells the story. So from this experience, what do you think is there that you would like to pass on to other people about what they could do? Like, there's obviously a lot of lessons in this experience that you've kind of like picked up. So maybe we can share some of the key lessons that they could apply to other kind of moments in their life, even ones where they have a choice to make or life is forcing them to make a choice. What are some of the key lessons you've learned that you think would be valuable for other people?
Okay. Yeah. Well, straight up, I'm going to go back to that mind. I call it mind monsters. And it doesn't sound very nice, but in the book, I talk about the nice monster and, the sensible monster and the mean one that kept turning up. But as I explained before, and I think most people and probably everyone on this summit knows this, that when you understand what your mind is trying to do, and it's evolutionary, and it goes back to the caveman, you know, somebody tries to walk out of the, cave and, they get pulled back because there's danger, danger, danger everywhere. And your mind doesn't know the difference. When we go to do something, or let's take writing my book, for example, it's alarm bells. You're putting yourself out there. You've never written anything before. Who's going to listen to you? Who's going to buy your book? Probably your father, just to be polite. Um, and all of these limiting beliefs coming at me. And I just went, hang on a minute. I'm a wake up to you. I know what you're trying to do. And I do this for everything, public speaking, everything. I say, oh, okay, thank you. I know what you're trying to do, but I'm doing this anyway. Why don't you come along for the ride? It's going to be fun. Like, let's do this together. And it kind of loses its sting, and it just goes, oh, well, that didn't work, you know. Um, so this is what I do with everything, and this is what I encourage any woman I work with or whatever to do and learn that learn that dance with the mind monsters. I mean, we all know that it's there to protect us, and so we're not going to walk in front of a bus. So we need it, don't we? But it doesn't know the difference between walking in front of a bus and writing a book, starting a business, reinventing yourself, whatever it is. So it's learning to deal with that. The other thing I've learnt, which is a major learning, is that when you start to do something new, you get resistance, full on resistance. And I think this is where a lot of people stop, where resistance is a compass to where you should be going. And the reason for that is because when something is super, super important to us, again, the mind knows it's out of our comfort zone. It means so much to us. Oh, come on, step back a bit. You don't have to do this. But it's actually telling you it's a go button, not a stop button. So we don't let resistance stop us. We know that it's a go button. So we go, oh, okay, here's the resistance coming up here. I know this is where I go. This is not where I stop. And someone taught me once that, the bison, the animal, the bison, with the big horns, apparently very intelligent. When there's a storm coming, they run towards it. They know that's the quickest way through to the other side. So I take that on as well. Okay, here comes the storm. I'm running through it. And the other thing is action is the antidote to fear. You can sit there all you like, lather all you like, and go, this is really scary. I don't think I'm going to do this. I'll wait till I do another course. I'll wait till next month when I'm not going to be so busy. I'll wait, Um, and no, just do something. Just do something towards your goal. The other thing that I truly, truly believe is that if we get called to do something, and what's interesting about this is it's always a little voice that's calling you to do the really important stuff, and a very loud, booming voice telling you not to, you know, all limiting beliefs, everything's coming at you, and you get this little voice down in your gut that goes, no, you can do this, you need to do this. And I believe if you get those voices and you get the call for reinvention, you get the call to start a business, to be a coach, to write a book, whatever that may be, to get on stage and speak, you don't get that calling if you're not capable of doing it. You don't. It's it's just not going to come. Not everyone gets it. Not everybody gets it. Some people just fluff about in their comfort zone. They're quite happy there. And but those of us that do, we need to do it. The world needs us. They need what we've got to say. Yeah, that would be my main ones. And the other thing, just one more, imposter syndrome is huge, right? Every person you talk to, I did a gig the other day, 3 women came up to me, I want to do this, but I feel like an imposter. And so when I was getting those imposter syndrome feelings, writing books and doing things I'd never done before, I flipped it on its head. And I said to myself, Julie, are you an imposter because you're answering your calling and you're going out and helping other people? Or are you an imposter sitting there and not doing what you're being called to do? And I decided the imposter was the one not answering the call, not the person going out and sharing their gifts with the world. And they're the main things that I live by.
Awesome. So the question I have is, how did you learn all of these things? Because you came up with your own kind of like operating system to help you navigate what was a very challenging time. So is this from just deep reflection, or how did you come by it? Because a lot of people would be going, I don't know if I'd come up with any of these kind of things. Like I'd have to do 101 different courses and then learn all of this stuff. But
I
you
know.
intuitively
Yeah.
found the answer.
Yeah. I actually, well, some of the stuff I've read about and learnt, um, all those things I told you just then. No, okay. So resilience, I did read about that is a compass to where you're going, and the bison story. But the others I did, and I think my answer to that is gee, you get clever when you're dying. You know, you have to. You sort of go, well, this isn't going to work. These thoughts aren't going to work. I can't. Um, what's the word? Give up and succumb to that fear and those thoughts in my head. So there's got to be an antidote. There has to be an antidote, and I probably never would have had I have not been put in a position where I was very close to death. So yeah, that's all I can say. And I think what I was talking about before, the calling, the world needs what you've got to say. Somebody has discovered these answers, haven't they? Somewhere along the line. Whether you're doing a course, whether you're doing, you know, somebody's worked out this stuff. And for me, yeah, I've done courses. However, I'm more of a lived experience girl. And I just like to go on, you know, teach stuff that I've actually done and I've actually lived, not just from a textbook that somebody's taught me. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does. Well, it goes back to the other answer you gave before, all about taking action. Like rather than
Yeah.
doing the next course, reading the next book, actually going off and actually taking action and then learning from the actual experience of taking the action. That's what keeps you kind of like moving forward. So I'm kind of like gathering the journey certainly wasn't linear. It was kind of like you uncovering what you needed to do next along the way. Would that be a correct assessment?
Oh, 100%. And it still is. It still is. And I purposely did not learn to write or look at books because I thought I'll just start judging myself and I'll just start saying, oh, I can't write like that. Um, so I purposely didn't do it. I'm not saying that everybody should do it that way, but I just needed to tell the story. Had I start going off doing courses and carrying on and looking what everyone else, I probably wouldn't have done it, or I would have got spooked. I would have got spooked. That's what would have happened. So I just said to myself, I was in the lowest class at English, but I'd made this promise, right? And when I got back from America, I conveniently forgot about that promise, didn't I? Until upstairs reminded me. Remember that night when you laid in the dark and you were examining your life and you said, if you get through this, you write a book? I'm like, yeah, sort of. And my mind said, you promised. It wasn't sort of, you promised. I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to say to myself, okay, Julie, can you write? Literally, can you pick up a pen? Can you write? Yep. Can you tell a story? Can you stand here and tell someone a story, something that happened to you the other day? Yes. Okay. Well, you can write a story. And I just started and didn't stop. 309 pages or something. Obviously, not in one day. Yeah. I mean, who'd have thought? Then I got a publisher, and that all when it wasn't great. And then a big publisher came along and said, we want it. And yeah, away we went. I mean, it was edited, everyone's book's edited. So yeah.
Awesome. No, and then you've taken this on, well, you've continued your reinvention journey, haven't you? Like maybe you can give the audience a little bit of a snapshot of some of the other things you've done since you came back from America.
Yep. Okay. So I wrote the book and I've done a lot of speaking and been invited back to America to speak. That's going back a few years now. So again, monsters, mind monsters. Oh my God, what are you going to do if you get on stage? And you know, in those days, I read from notes. What if you lose your place? What if you know, you get emotional? What if, what if, what if? Again, thank you. I'm doing this. Um, and I knew I was doing it because I knew that was where I was going to go with things. And so I would go over there and do talks with notes. And then one day I'd been doing that for a while. And then one day I said, Julie, you know, if you're serious about speaking, you have to speak without notes. And so started that journey again. That was, you know, you get the negative thoughts, etc. That was probably about 6 years ago. And yeah, now I do public speaking around my story and sometimes for charity, but now I've started to move into women's, you know, reinvention. Um, well, summits like this and just lunches and things. And so I do that. I'm in the process of writing another book, which is really stepping out of my comfort zone this time because it's not just telling a story. It's more about um, what we'd call a transformational memoir, I guess. So it's part story, part what I've learnt and how to apply it. So kind of like all the things I'm talking to you about. So that's a challenge because it's trying to get everything in order and in place. But so I'm doing that, and I mentor. I'm a mentor as well, and I'm in the process, which will probably be coming in about 3 or 4 months of writing a program. So that'll be a mentoring program. So they're the things I've done, and become a grandmother.
Very
Um,
good.
yeah, yeah. Told I wasn't gonna be that, and another one coming in a couple of months. So yeah, look, life hasn't been without its challenges, Damien. I'm not going to lie. Like I lost my sister from cancer, and that was horrific. A lot of what happened to me, we've had like financial issues because of it. Um, so yeah, it's has not been without its challenges, but you know, one foot in front of the other. And I love what I do, and I love that what I do can help people. And I know it does from messages and things I get. So yeah, never thought this would be my life.
No, brilliant. So, what would you say to others who, because you mentioned this before, a lot of people are living a life where they're just putting things off till tomorrow, where they say, no, I'll do it sometime or something like that. What would you say to the people like this?
I would say, and it's what I do say, is, and I'm not implying here that you're going to be told you're dying, but I say in the back of my book, you know, don't wait till you're told you're dying to start truly living. Just don't wait. Do something. Um, you know, everybody's got 5 minutes per day to put towards something they want to do. You know, just just do it. It's please take it from me. um, if you've got something you want to do and it's, you know, that little voice inside, you're meant to be doing it. you you know, that's what you're meant to be doing in this world. It doesn't tell you that for nothing. So, and it's a great feeling when you're doing it. It's a great feeling when you know you're answering that call.
Very
Yeah.
good. And then what would you say this whole of experience has taught you about yourself?
Wow. It taught me definitely I was a whole lot stronger and tougher than I thought I was. However, I sort of had to morph into a different personality to get all that done, to be honest. And I think sometimes we sit in our perceived personalities and just think that's us and there's no more. And I learned that there was more talents, more, you know, more everything really. Just yeah, that is a big thing for me. It's like, we all grow up and we've learned what, in the first 7 to 12 years, what we perceive who we are. And that becomes outdated. That becomes outdated a lot of the time. And we're still working through old beliefs and thinking that it's us. And it's okay to challenge them. You say to yourself, okay, well, I don't think I'm okay. So many people say to me, I could never get up on a stage and speak. And I say, well, you know what? I wouldn't even speak at my own wedding. You know, that was me. I taught myself to do it. I just said, you can do it. You start with the notes, then you take the next step. We're more than we think we are. And I have this, when I'm like speaking to you or speaking at an event, I'm, Julie 2.0. When I'm hanging around with my family, I'm still Julie, you know, 1.0 or whatever that may be. I rise to the occasion that I need to. You don't have to, because people get scared that, oh, what if I start doing that? What will my friends think, and what will my family think? And you know, doesn't matter what they think for starters, but you don't have to be different around them. You know, I've had nothing but support, to be honest with you, from everybody with what I do. But I do hear that some people get a lot of resistance from friends and stuff, and it's usually their stuff. It's usually they don't like it because you're lifting and you know doing stuff in the world that they're too scared to do. So don't worry about what others think.
Very true. So,
Mm.
what would you like to say to someone today who's maybe discouraged, a little bit unhappy with their life, feeling they're stuck? What's the message of hope you'd like to give them? And what's the very first thing they should do, even perhaps today, to kind of get them out of this kind of like way to think about
Funk.
life?
Yeah. Look, I'll tell a little. I'll tell a little story here. When I was going through the worst of my diagnosis, my husband and I were sort of going everywhere in Sydney. We went to a medical biologist. He was in the city of Canberra, which is, our Australian Capital Territory. And I walked into him, and he was more like a, natural guy meets whatever. He wasn't just the normal medico. And he was telling me how melanoma cells are the worst you can get in a scale of 1 to 10. They're 9 point, or they're up there with the worst you can get. And they multiply very quickly. And I'm sitting there listening to all of this. And, he gave me some potions and things to take. And then as I'm leaving his office, I open the door and he says, Julie, one more thing. You have to be happy and you have to experience joy. Your body will know that you're serious about recovery, and it's a must do. And I'm like, are you? effing serious? Like you've just told me this, I'm going to be dying and leaving my children. They're not going to have a mother. My husband here is not going to have a wife, and you're telling me I have to be happy and joyful? But he was so serious about it. I thought, okay. And then I thought about it in my head and I thought, okay, so even if you are dying, do you want the next few months to be miserable or do you want them to be happy? And I wasn't overly sick at the time, so I was lucky. And I went off and I ran and I sung and I went to parties and I drank tequila and and if anyone reads the book, you'll see throughout the whole book that, I'm not saying there wasn't some down moments and I'm not trying to be some sort of hero because I'm not and I wasn't. I had moments that I was awful. And, but this joyful thing, going back to your question, anybody who's feeling that low now, and there's different types of this. If we're talking about grief, grief is, you need to walk through grief. And I know I'm not here to say, oh, somebody you love died last week and you should be dancing around the lounge room. However, if it is just feeling low and disparaged and, I just want to say to you, play some music, um, play your favorite song, go for a walk, um, not too much, maybe, tonight, have a drink. Just remind yourself of when you were happy. I'm sure most people are happy at some stage. And if I could do it back in those days, under those circumstances, anyone can do it. Just, and then once the happiness and a little bit of joy hits, things will become a little bit clearer. And then take one step. What is it that would make you feel alive? What is it? Is it is it a walk? Is it a run? Is it writing in a journal? Is it, you know, um, yeah, just looking at your next step, job wise, or yeah, it's just the simple things, but it's so easy to tell yourself the hard and the sad things, and it is human nature, but it's also human nature. It is our God-given right to experience joy. You know that that's why we're here. We're all going to expire one day. Which way do you want it to go? The joyful way or the feeling sorry for yourself way? The victim or the owner? Black
Awesome.
and white.
Brilliant. Well, to finish up, some quick questions I like to ask each of our speakers. So, question number one, what is the biggest lesson life taught you after 40? So, not necessarily the lessons you learned through your journey, but is there another lesson that you've learned after 40?
Definitely. Listen to the little voice. Listen to the little voice in down here that's telling you, calling. It might not even be a calling. It might just be a little gut feel. Listen to it because that is the voice of reason and not these booming, limiting beliefs. And I did learn that after 40. I just believed everything I thought. Your thoughts aren't necessarily real. They're just, yeah, I think you have the same, I think it's 90% or 80% the same thoughts every day.
Yeah.
So, it's, you've got to sort of go, oh, okay, yeah, that thought again. And yeah, so I learned to not to take my thoughts seriously a lot of the time. So
Awesome.
that's a big one.
And what is your personal definition of reinvention?
Ooh, um, I think again, it's listening to that calling or listening to what it is you want to do or need to do, and getting out of your comfort zone, learning how to get out of your comfort zone, manage your mind, and action. Do it. Yeah, reinvention is, yeah, changing it up, doing the next thing that you're meant to be doing, you know, with your life.
Very good. So, what advice would you give to someone who's afraid to start again?
Okay. I probably covered this and might be repeating myself, but you really have to question what that fear is. You know, why are you afraid to start again? Um, I understand if it's a financial, sometimes that can be hard. And I think, like myself, when I wanted to reinvent myself and write books and do things, I couldn't just give up my job. I wasn't in a position to do that. So um, it's taking those little steps and yeah, believing in yourself. Yeah, why ask yourself, why are you afraid? Why am I afraid? Am I afraid because um, people are going to have an opinion of me? And for me, I could tell another story here, but um, for me, if that person hasn't, as Brene Brown says, been in the arena, taken themselves out of their comfort zone, done anything remotely challenging, why would you be interested in what they've got to say anyway? So that's a big one. Um, yeah, I'm just trying to think of all the different fears you get, and I think I went through them before. It's, why would somebody listen to me? Why would somebody not listen to you? And there, I learned this. I learned this thing. Somebody taught me this thing. So if we draw a circle, 360 degrees, three quadrants, 33.33% in each, and that's the world. That's the 8.6 billion now, I think we're up to. Um, 33% of those people won't like what you do. 33% of those people won't really care if you do it or not. But there's 33% of people in this world that need to hear what you've got to say and cater to them, cater to the people that just, you have to learn this, but you do learn to ignore people who, you know, I had someone this happened to when I wrote my book. And it was really funny because for a whole month I was getting really nice messages and thank you, you've helped me do this and thank you for writing a book. And so I got quite cocky and decided to Google myself. And I got absolutely slammed by a book reviewer who called themselves the Cozy Dragon, who didn't even have a name. And they thought it was a science fiction book, Patient 71. So, of course, they've gone in to get all this technical science fiction stuff. And it was little old me telling the story. And at first I felt quite gutted, and I'm like, oh, that's really mean. And after about 24 hours, I thought, Julie, are you going to listen to that one person or are you going to listen to the other 50 people that have said, thank you for writing that book because you really helped me? And we all tend to do that. Like negative stuff sticks to us like Velcro, and we can be complimented 50 times and it just slides off like Teflon. Um, and that's all scientific as well that I won't go into. But yeah, if you're too afraid to start something, think of who you're going to help, even if it is just yourself.
Awesome. And final question, what does living your best life, or what I call a legend life, mean for you?
It means to live to my potential, be joyful, have fun, um, keep as fit and healthy as you can without going overboard. It means to keep examining what I've got to say and who I'm going to say it to, and just help as many people as I can, because that really gives me joy. It really gives me joy. So yeah, write my next book, finish that off, and just keep speaking and just keep lifting up. I'm say women because that's who I work with, but I don't like to just, single out women, but yeah, just keep making other people's lives better. And, people sure make mine better, you know, when I go and speak to people, it's just wonderful. I love it. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, Julie, thanks so much. It's certainly been a very inspiring and insightful story and conversation. I'm sure people have got a lot of value out of that. I've certainly shared some wonderful lessons that we can all kind of like apply to our life. I think anyone listening to this can certainly take from it that we all have more potential than we think. We can do more things. Even in the darkest moments, there's always hope and possibility. We just got to keep on believing that something can happen, and we don't give up until we have no choice because we're not here anymore. So we
That's
just have
it.
to.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That
for anyone interested in learning a little bit more about you, where can I find you online?
okay. So I'm not as great as I should be online, but I've got a website. It's being sort of upgraded at the moment, but that is julie-randal.com.au. I'm on Instagram, underscore patient71. And yeah, I mean, if you go online, my, contact Julie is on there. And yeah, my mentoring program will come up soon, but it's not up yet. I do, personal mentoring. And yeah, that's where you can find me.
Brilliant. Well, Julie, one more time, thank you so much for taking part in the Midlife Reinvention Summit.
Yes, well, I'm 63 now, and still going strong and don't plan to stop anytime soon. So, yeah, you're never too old. It's never too late.
Awesome.